every time I step in the booth, I speak the truth. Y'all know what I'm bringing to you.
You're live on the air, and the truth with Terrance Ruth. North Carolina news and politics, culture, sports, and the latest from the Triangle and Eastern Carolina. The truth with Terrance Ruth. The air and the truth with Terrance Ruth. North Carolina news and politics, culture, sports, and the latest from the Triangle and Eastern Carolina. The truth with Terrance Ruth.
North Carolina, welcome to the truth. This is Terrance Ruth. Pleasure to be with you. Again, truth is one of them terms that we're not seeing too often in our country, especially in North Carolina. So we decided to make it an episode for you. So I welcome you to the show. I'm glad to be here. I'm Terrance Ruth, professor at NC State, ran for mayor of Raleigh, have a wife and a son, but just glad to be with you because we have some politics to talk about, and we got to shed truth on areas where there's some shadiness in our political infrastructure. But I want to start with just something a little light. I often am connected with people who are wanting to know what drives me, what connects me, and we had the anniversary of Kobe Bryant no longer being with us, and I like to tap into that Mamba, and I think in our political world, man, we need a little bit of Mamba with us, man. And so I'm a big fan of Kobe. I think Kobe is one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. But in our season, you don't see too many Mambas. And so I wanted to just highlight a season that we're in and missing a very great legend, an LA legend, one of the people I looked up to, and that's Kobe Bryant. But what you'll get from this episode is, number one, you get us grounding ourselves in the truth, trying to discover what do we need to know about our politics in North Carolina, and particularly Eastern North Carolina. And then the second thing we're going to delve into the top issues, the issues that are really plaguing our city, especially coming into an election season. We're at the primaries right now, so we're in election season, so there's some things that we need to really dig in and understand. And so welcome to the show. Welcome to The Truth with Terrance Ruth. And I want to really give you a little emphasis into my world. I studied political public affairs with my PhD. I did a little bit of work around education policy through the Friday Institute at NC State. I have had the opportunity to really move and engage with local leaders. I was executive director of the NAACP, where I was leader over with Dr. Barber when he was over the NAACP. Had a chance to go to national work with the repairs of the breach and do some VP work. And so I'm excited to really bring all that combination to this conversation around truth, politics, and how do we engage? How do we make politics palatable, something that we can consume as everyday people? And so in this particular episode, in this particular platform, my goal is really to make politics easy for you and make truth easy for you in politics in North Carolina. And so with that, I wanted to really just give you a little glimpse into my own world. I have a son that's 9. He is in Wake County Public Schools. I have a wife who engages in contract work around social media. So if you see her at a restaurant, she's normally blogging and connecting with them. So that's my own little personal world. So my politics center around education, center around social justice, and center also around local governance. And so I want to get into a little bit of that with you. So I have a little top 5. I have a top 5 that I want to run down. Today we're going to zoom into education as a broader category, but I have a top 5 here. One, we're in a season where you're going to be electing school superintendents or school board members, state superintendents, and then also General Assembly, people who will represent you at the state level. Each one of those individuals will impact your education. So my top 5 that I would like to touch is number 1, underfunded schools. So in education, especially when you go to rural Eastern North Carolina, the funding issue has been an issue for a very long time. It has been a persistent issue that affects schools. You're talking about limited resources and larger class sizes. You're talking about fewer educational resources. You're talking about lower teacher salaries. As a consequence, students may not receive the individualized instruction that they need. So that's number 1 of my top 5. Number 2, the persistent challenge of underfunded schools in North Carolina also has a ripple effect on teacher retention. So most of you might not know that schools are barely holding on to staff. So you're talking about schools who are almost living off of substitutes. You're talking about schools who are almost living off of substitute bus drivers, or even if we get to the bus driver side. And then you have building infrastructure that's needing support and funding. So my number 2 is underfunded schools. My number 1 is underfunded school. My number 2 is the staff retention. My number 3 is the struggle for teacher salaries. Now, what we're seeing in education is actually all across the state. Our teacher salaries are not competitive to what the cost of living is. We're one of the top growing states in the country. And we're seeing people roll in with salaries that's making our teachers not be able to live in their region. Teacher salary, way before 2020, teachers had a march downtown saying that we need a living wage. And they had all red shirts on, they were marching downtown. So my next top 3 is teacher salaries. We have to do something about teacher salaries. We have to make sure that we have enough resources for our schools. And then number 1, we have to make sure we're not underfunding the infrastructure. Number four, low graduation rates. Unfortunately, you can almost align this graduation rates with race. And so we're seeing a lot of our black and brown students enter school but not finish. And for any of us today, we know that education is critical. Not only that, education is almost parallel with the history of the African-American story in North Carolina. You can actually trace the story of public education with the story of black history in our country. And so it's important that we're in the month of February, we're talking about education. And the very last one I would like to touch on is early childhood education. Early childhood education, I call it the first 1,000 days. You're either going to invest in your kids day one, or you're going to have to invest after they get out of high school. No matter what you do, you're going to have to invest in your kids' education. And what I'm saying is you save more money when you engage in early education. So that's my top 5 today. It's all centered around education. I want to make sure that we are responding to the issues that are coming up in this election. Now, I'm going to touch on a little bit of this later, but we have a state superintendent election this year. And for those of y'all who don't know who the state superintendent is, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. But that role is critical, but not just that. The school board members that you elect locally are critical. They're the ones that hire your superintendent. And so I want to make sure that you are understanding the state of our education and not in that top 5, all right? So now I want to move on to state headlines. Now, for those of you who are paying attention, we are literally inching towards a primary race. So you have an intense gubernatorial race, which means we have 2 people, we actually have 3 people running for, 3 significant individuals running for governor, all right? These 3 people running for governor, they are in an intense race. One Republican, Mark Robinson. You have Justice Morgan, and then you also have Josh Stein. These are your 3 individuals running. but you have a primary. If you're a Democrat, you have a primary coming up soon, okay? Make sure you tap into your county board of elections, okay? Your county board of election will let you know that date, that time, when you can go and select your candidate. There are primary elections all down the ballot. But the one that's going to sort of be the headline this year is going to be our governor. Now, Governor Cooper is heading out, which means that we are looking for a person to pretty much spearhead our state. And so if you're sleeping at the wheel, this primary will pass you by. I'm trying to let you know that election starts now. I know you had your New Year's resolution, you had January, you had the Martin Luther King breakfast. Now we're in February, it's game time, all right? That Mamba mentality I mentioned earlier, this is the moment. And it's important that you understand primaries give your candidate energy. Between the primary in November, that candidate is now building momentum, all right? So again, I want to let you know, I want to zoom into your gubernatorial candidate. That's our state headlines for the day, all right? Now, Eastern North Carolina, you have a slate of superintendents that's going to be hired by your school board members. So each county has a superintendent. In that superintendent, they're going to be the ones that drive the operations, the day-to-day operations of your school. So when I talk about underfunding, when I talk about teacher recruitment, when I talk about graduation rates, this is where you come in. All power rests in the local voter. So Eastern North Carolina, this is your moment to step up to the line. You're going to have school board members advocating for your vote. Not just in November, we're talking about right now. You should already be plugging into your party. They should already be holding meetings to select who will be the candidate represented or endorsed by your party. So Eastern North Carolina, this is the moment to wake up. This is the time. This is where primaries start. And because we're talking about education today, I want to just talk about school board members. Yes, we have a governor that's going to be elected this year. Yes, we have state and federal representatives that are going to be elected this year. But today, we're going to talk about school board. Some of y'all don't even know who's representing y'all on the school board. This is where you learn. If you care about your kids' education, vote for your school board. If you care about recruiting strong teachers, if you want to see black representation in your classrooms, vote for your school board. If you want to make sure that the person hired as your superintendent is being responsive to the students and the parents, vote for your school board. This is the moment. And I want to let you know, school boards ever since 2020 have been packed with people, literally packed with advocates. So if you're not in your school board meeting, you're already late to the game. So I just want to come in and tell you this is Mamba time now in local elections. Sometimes people want to wait till November. They want to wait. No, this is the moment now, okay? So Eastern North Carolina, I need y'all to wake up. This is the primaries. Action's already started. People are already planning their committees. Politicians are already lining up their platforms. This is the time where you study. Go and study your school board members. See what their stances are on DEI in school. See what their positions are on resource officers in the school. See what their positions are on teacher recruitment and teacher pay. Go to their websites. Ask questions. Eastern North Carolina, this is the moment to learn your candidates. They need you, not the other way around. I want to encourage you to, number one, go to the website. Number two, what's important to you? Education touches everything. Education touches your neighborhood quality. Matter of fact, the studies say by third grade, they can predict whether your child will graduate high school or not. By the third grade, they can predict whether your kid will go on to college or not. By the third grade, they can predict the annual salary that that child will make as an adult. So I'm telling you now, education is critical. That's why I wanted to launch this show on education. So this is the time to learn your candidate. If you wait till November, you're going to have a very long ballot. There's going to be a lot of candidates on that ballot. This is your time to do your homework. All right? So one thing I want to touch around the superintendent. Number one, make sure that your superintendent know who you are. Most parents stop at the principal. The principal, if you're thinking of a fast food restaurant, the principal is just a restaurant manager. You need to go to the superintendent. The superintendent need to know who you are. The superintendent need to know your name. Your family should be known by the superintendent. Matter of fact, there's a study that says that the more a parent is engaged, the better their kid is treated in that school. The more a parent is engaged in the school district with the superintendent, the better that school district treats your child. I'm encouraging you to go to the CEO, which is your superintendent of your school district. Don't wait with the principal. Now, I've had the opportunity to be an alternative principal, so I'm talking out of expertise to some degree. I had a chance to be an alternative principal. For those of you who don't know what that means, alternative principals receive all the suspended kids in your school district. So if they get suspended, they get kicked out, they come to me. And usually when they come to me, what I have witnessed is that they have a track record. The school districts track your kids' behavior. I can see that this behavior has been going on for a long time, or this was a one-time incident. More than likely, this has been a trend for a long time. You have a chance to intervene early by knowing who your superintendent is. You have a chance now to advocate for your kid at the highest level, and that's the superintendent of your district. Now, me as a principal, I always encourage parents to not just go to the area superintendent, that's the superintendent that sits under your district superintendent, but go to the top, all right? Now, the next part, after you know the superintendent, don't engage the superintendent just when things are wrong. Go and engage the superintendent even when the meetings are positive. I encourage you to go to the school board meetings. Go and listen to the topics that are being discussed. Speak in front of the school board. Let them see who you are. All of this produces social capital in the school district. So I said, go meet your your district superintendent, the person that operates the school. Go and meet your principal, but also go to the school board meetings. Your school board representative should know you. The school board hires the superintendent. So it's great to know the superintendent, but when you elect your school board member, that school board member needs to know your name. So go and meet with your school board member. They would love to hear your voice. School board is as close as you can get to improving your kids' education. The school board actually gives out reports during the meeting. Hey, I met this parent. This parent had this concern. And what's amazing that our state is filled with amazing advocacy organizations that help you be prepared and encouraged and empowered to go and speak to the superintendent, the school board member, et cetera. For one, Public Schools First. PublicSchoolsFirst.com, you go there, they give you all the resources you need to know what are the important issues in North Carolina. What are the top issues that you need to know for your district superintendent? What issues do you need to know that you need to make sure that's on the website of the school board member that you want to vote for? So Eastern North Carolina, this is your chance. Don't wait till November. Be active right now. Voting should be a lifestyle, okay? Don't wait. All right, now, I mentioned the superintendent, I mentioned the principal, I mentioned your teacher needing to see you and touch you, but I want to go to early education now. Eastern North Carolina, historically, Black education started in the home At one point in our country, it was against the law for African Americans to learn. At one point in our country, we could only learn at the black church. So our early church history in North Carolina for African Americans, that the pastor was also the principal. The pastor was also the teacher. So we still have some of these schools existing today called the Rosenwald schools. These schools were basically churches, one-room house schools, and you had churches converted into classrooms and classrooms converted into churches. So learning literally started in the community. It started at home. Early education is your opportunity to engage your child in learning right now. Before you vote for a school board member, before you get to know your district superintendent, before you vote for your state superintendent, create a plan to educate your kid at home. And I want to, when we come from break, I want to walk you through how I went through that journey. I actually had to do it myself. My son is 9. We have had him on a plan ever since he was born. He don't know nothing else. And so when we come back from break, I want to give you a chance to glimpse into what does it mean to take control of education. So if your candidate doesn't win at school board, you still have a strategy. If the superintendent that you have currently is not meeting your needs, you still have a strategy. If the person you want to lead the state DPI, Department of Public Instruction, that superintendent is not who you desire, you can still take education into your own hands. So I want to equip you and make sure you're ready. So tune in, come back, and meet us after this break.
Every time I step in the booth, I speak the truth. Y'all know what I'm bringing to you.
You're live on the air, and the truth with Terrance Ruth. North Carolina news and politics, culture, sports, and the latest from the Triangle and Eastern Carolina. The truth with Terrance Ruth. North Carolina requires ID to vote in 2024. Polls accept your North Carolina driver's license, U.S. passport, and NC voter ID, photo ID from your county's Board of Elections, a college or university ID, or a state, local government, or charter school employee ID. Be ready for election season. For more information, go to safevoternc.org or ncblackalliance.com.
Ever loved real hard? Then this is the show for you. Get ready for the Love Hard Tour. Keisha Cole, Trey Songz,
Put your hands in the air if you love this.
Jaheim, and your girl K. Michelle. The Love Hard Tour, Friday, February 23rd at the Greensboro Coliseum. Tickets available at Ticketmaster. Presented by the Black Promoters Collective.
Come on, folks. Come and try Seafood Grill Restaurant, located at 8204 Tryon Woods Drive in Cary. Come get some amazing food combos. Either way, you'll like it, grilled and fried. Hey, Raleigh, your wardrobe deserves the royal treatment, and we've got just the place for you. Martinizing Cleaners, your new go-to dry cleaners in town. We know life gets busy, and that's why Martinizing Cleaners on Raven Ridge Road is here to make your life easier. Experience the convenience of pickup and delivery, same-day service, and trust us with our expert wash and fold service. Our non-toxic approach ensures your clothes and the environment stay fresh. And here's an exclusive offer just for you. Mention Choice FM 92.1 when you visit Martinizing Cleaners and enjoy 50% off on comforters. Yep, you heard it right. 50% off just for being our valued customer. Martinizing Cleaners, 10911 Raven Ridge Road, Unit 101, Raleigh. Call 919-703-0007. Visit martinizing.com/Raleigh for more details. Martinizing Cleaners, because your clothes deserve the royal treatment.
What's better than winning a prize on a Multiply the Cash scratch-off?
Oh, hello? Well, I guess I'd say probably...
Winning every single prize. What's better than winning every single prize?
I can't think
Winning every prize times 2 with the Win-All Doubler.
Well, you don't need me here, so I'm going to go pick up a scratch-off.
New Multiply the Cash from the North Carolina Education Lottery with a chance to win every prize doubled. Must be 18 to play. Approximate overall odds of winning range from 1 in 3.77 to 4.71. Problem gambling helpline 877-718-5543.
Watts Chapel Missionary Baptist Church with Reverend Dr. Harry L. White Jr. online at wattschapel.org and live this Sunday at 9:30 on Choice FM.
The Universal Circus is back in Raleigh, and Choice has the tickets. Listen to the DOC each day from 1 to 6 for your chance to win a Universal family pack. You know we got soul. Universal. Choice FM.
Every time I step in the booth, I speak the truth. Y'all know what I'm bringing to you.
You're live on the air in The Truth with Terrance Ruth. North Carolina news and politics, culture, sports, and the latest from the Triangle and Eastern Carolina. The Truth with Terrance Ruth.
Welcome back. Now, I wanna just give you a sneak peek into how I took control of my son's education. Now, for me, we normally defer to the teacher, we defer to the principal, we defer to the school board, but this kid was born and lived with you. The kid, you know the kid the best. Ideally, you are the best positioned person to customize their education. So let me walk you through how I landed on my strategy, right? So I attended St. Paul AME Church downtown Raleigh. If y'all know that church, been around for hundreds of years, okay? St. Paul. They started an education program that had retired black teachers. That program allowed for me to be a tutor. And I had this young girl named Jayla. Jayla changed my world. She changed how I see public education. When I was tutoring Jayla, every day of her life, except for Saturday and Sunday, she was in a tutoring program. Every day of her life, starting from kindergarten all the way through high school, this young lady was doing math tutoring, reading tutoring, playing a musical instrument, all at St. Paul AME Church. So what happened is the parents said, I want my daughter to be taught by St. Paul AME, and then I want public school to supplement her learning. We have to shift from making the public school the primary learning center and make the public school the secondary learning center. The way you do that is you have to invest. Just how much you invest in AAU, you invest in Pop Warner football, that's the same level of intensity that you need to invest in education at a very young age. So Jayla, when she was with me, she was in kindergarten. The mom said, teacher 2 or 3 levels ahead. I'm teaching this young girl 2nd and 3rd grade work, and she was in the 1st grade. When she was in the 5th grade, I was teaching the 6th and 7th grade level work, and she was in the 5th grade. So for me, I said, how do I take control of my son's education? I put him in the same program. My son, since he can remember, have had a tutor, a learning coach, whatever name you want to give it. So this is where I want to pause for a second. We have a stigma in our community around tutoring. I have been a part of alternative schools that I described earlier in the show, where kids get suspended to me, but I've also been a part of high-performing schools where kids are going on to Ivy League universities. Kids in high-performing schools are in learning environments 365 days of the year. There's no time out and pause. So my son has been, I'm gonna do a shout out to Miss Cheryl at St. Paul AME, has been with Miss Cheryl since he can remember. Miss Cheryl is no longer a stigma. Miss Cheryl is how he learns. So my son, every year, the school district is asking us, do you want your child to move up in a grade? Not, we gonna have to hold your kid back a grade. They're asking us for permission to move our son up a grade. So what we do, we pick 2 days for math. In that math, Miss Cheryl is giving him 2 grades ahead of where he's at in his classroom. When he goes to school, the teacher is just supplementing that learning. Then there are 3 days of reading. This is where we had to put most of our investment just based on the kid we have. You may have a kid that's a strong reader and you need to invest more into math. It all depends on how your kid responds. That's why I say you are the captain of your kid's learning, not the teacher. You are the captain of your kid's learning, not the school board member. You are the captain of your kid's learning, not the state superintendent. So take your kid's learning and you become the head teacher. Now, a couple of years ago, there's some rumblings around banning schools and classrooms. Matter of fact, one of our gubernatorial candidates are running on that platform, that we need to purge or select or take out books out of the school library. It doesn't matter if your home has a library. It doesn't matter if that kid goes home to parents who read. It doesn't matter if you have a culture of reading at home. They can ban whatever in the libraries at the school, but if they're coming home to James Baldwin, if they're coming home to Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, if they're coming home to Maya Angelou, who cares what they banned in the school library? You are the captain of your kids' learning. So my son has 2 days of reading, 2 days of math. He's already ahead of his class in math. He has 3 days of reading. We give him a book to read. That's a chapter book for those parents who wants to know, go to the library and say, I'm looking for your chapter books. And they'll give you what grade level, they'll give you a topic, and they would love to have parents come in with their kid into the library. Then he reads on his own at home. Then he will see me reading on my own at home. And then we read together at home. So my son has 3 examples of reading at home. I am a book fanatic. And I'm not telling you you have to be a book fanatic. I'm not saying you need to become a reader, but your kids do what they see. So if they see a learner at home, no matter how you learn, they will become a learner themselves. My father did not go to college, but he did get a technical degree. But I watched this man learn underneath hoods of cars. He was trying to learn the engine. My father was always a student of cars. He wanted to be a mechanic. I watched him learn. He would have mechanic books where he's highlighting. You can learn in many ways. But the best way to take control of your learning at home is to become a learner yourself. Never think you're too old to start learning. Be a forever student. The reason why I say that, because that's where you start to create a learning culture. Now, I put aside a budget, me and my wife, for my son to have a learning coach his entire life. The reason why that investment makes sense now is because when your kid graduates high school, if they want to go to college, that's money. If your kid wants to go into a technical career, that's money. If your kid wants to go into the tech world, you still got to get certifications. That's money. You're either going to pay for it now while they're young, or you're going to pay for it later. And I would love for my son to be awarded for his years of learning early by getting a scholarship or getting a program that wants his mind. Believe me this, just like schools go and recruit the top athletes across Eastern North Carolina, they go and recruit top brains in Eastern North Carolina. Duke will send your kid a letter based on their scores as early as middle school, okay? And I'm just talking about learning. I'm just talking about intelligence at this point, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, there are recruiters for kids' mind, okay? So don't think that the only way to college is to make sure that they're the top athletic performer. They will also give you a scholarship for being the top brain. And there's a way in which you can cultivate that culture. So that's just a little glimpse into my home. We try our best, me and my wife, to make sure that we are providing the best learning environment for our son, and not just through a tutor, but we are learners. I teach at the School of Social Work and Africana Studies at NC State, so I'm often in my books all the time. The best way to transfer my knowledge to my son is to show him that I'm learning. Everything else is secondary. Public schools, secondary. Now, I want to tell you, at the state level, there's a debate going on. There's something called the Leandro Report. For those of y'all who know the Leandro Report, you can Google it. Leandro Report is a over 20-year-old legal case that said that the state of North Carolina has underfunded public schools. And it's over 100 pages. But they have summaries. In that summary, it basically says, we need a certain amount of dollars in order to meet our legal obligation to teach kids. So what I just shared about my son and about learning early, I wish that was optional. I wish that we had the top performing public school and it was optional, or the top school structure, the top funded school. I wish it was optional. But you have to be aggressive. And again, I'm always gonna go to the Mamba mentality. You have to go into the gym of learning just like Kobe did in basketball. And you have to do it for your child. It's not optional. I wish you could just vote, and that vote immediately translates into increased funding into your kids right now immediately. I wish I could tell you that you just make sure your school board hires the right superintendent for your district and it just translates into immediate outcomes for your child right now. I wish that I could say that you elect your state superintendent and it transfers into learning outcomes right now for your child. The fastest way to direct outcomes for your child learning is you controlling learning at home, period. That's a hard stop, period. So I'm telling you, be on the lookout for ways in which you can invest in your kids early and often. And to me, I think that's the best investment you can give a kid when they can think and build on their own. Now, I want to link that over to health and wellness. For most of you, you may or may not know, since 2020, there's been an increase in kids talking about anxiety, talking about mental health. Suicide rates for young kids have skyrocketed. I'm at a high-performing state college, and we are grappling with the same sad fate of kids taking their lives. And so for me, learning in a place where you can fail and still be encouraged to grow, learning in a place where you can be who you are and feel accepted and not picked on, that's the best place to actually foster strong mental health with your kids. So if your kids is confident in their learning at home, when they get to that school, they're gonna be confident in their learning at the school. But I wanted to tell you about this research that has been, is now actually a dated research. It's called ACEs. ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. For those of you who don't know, your school has been using it. And they've been using it for some time. The research says that when your kid goes through traumatic events, it could be hunger, it could be homelessness, it could be divorce, it could be racism, it could be gender bias. There's a list of things. You could get a score. There's an ACEs score. On that score, if your score is high, it says that your body, not just you have gone through a traumatic event, you feel bad about yourself, but it says your actual physical body changes. It used to be that, hey, if you go through a traumatic event, hey, you're gonna go through it for a season, you're gonna get over it, get well. No, mental health is real. And we're seeing that when kids go through traumatic events in their schools, that impacts their actual physical body. You can no longer, as a parent, as an adult, as a community member, sit on the sideline around mental health. Here's a few things I encourage for you to take on. Number one, watch your child. They communicate in their behavior. Just watch them. Observe subtle changes in their behaviors. If you engage in your school, your teacher will say, hey, Mr. Ruth, I'm noticing something different about your son. If you engage in your school, the principal will say, hey, we're noticing something different about your son. They will help give you additional eyes on your child. The worst thing that can happen is no one sees your kid and they make a very difficult decision to either harm themselves or others because they can't deal with the trauma that they're going through. For this spotlight, I'm talking about education. Mental health is real. We need to give better attention to what our kids are showing us just in how they behave and move. All right, so the next one, when they tell you something, listen. Now, I grew up in the age where if your parents say something, you listen, you didn't really say anything back. The kids are silent. You're supposed to listen, hear what the adults say, and go about your day. Listen, our culture has shifted. When kids talk, listen. Sometimes they don't even know how to communicate what they're going through. But listen, they may give you a hint into something that they're dealing with that's difficult. If you have multiple kids in the same school, remember that what's traumatic for one kid may not be traumatic for another. So you can't just assume that one kid is all right, so all your kids are okay. I'm one of 6. I'm telling you from experience. I'm one of 6. We're all different. The very last thing, in the school building, you have the principal I mentioned, you have the teacher I mentioned, you have the superintendent I mentioned, and you have the state superintendent I mentioned. What I have not mentioned, who I have not mentioned are the helping professionals. The helping professionals are your psychologists. Each school has a psychologist assigned to that school. In rural Eastern North Carolina, because there's a deficit in funding for helping professionals, sometimes that psychologist is shared across schools. So normally they're dealing with triage, which means they're only responding to the most urgent events. So when you're advocating for a state superintendent, you need to say, we need more money for the helping professional. We need more psychologists in our schools. The next professional you need to think about is the school social worker. I haven't mentioned the school social worker at all, but when your kid is absent, that's the person going to your home. If your kid is hungry, it's the social worker that's making sure that there's food in the home. If there's child abuse or spousal abuse, it's the school social worker that's engaging in that work. The social worker wears many hats. It is not just attendance. That person, I would argue, is most keen to the ups and downs of kids in the school. But if you're in rural Eastern North Carolina, because of the funding, that one human being has to overlook thousands of kids, not hundreds, not one school, multiple schools. So they only can get to the most urgent issues. Remember earlier when I said the top 5 is underfunding schools? This is where we need funding. I can talk about mental health all day, but if we only have emergency rooms in schools, then we're only addressing those who are going through crisis. But if we have well-funded schools, then we have smaller ratios of social workers to students, psychologists to students. Now, with the helping professionals, their job is to make sure that the school is being responsive to your kids. If they have an IEP, if they have a 504, those individuals are making sure that they're being responsive to your kids' needs. They're probably going to call you before you call them. So for mental health and wellness, make sure that you're not dismissing the things that your kids say. And make sure that you are being connected to not just the voices of the teacher, but make sure you're being responsive to the helping professionals. Now I want to pivot to the national headline. In the national headline, I want to just touch on this idea that we are seeing across the country teacher vacancy. Now, in that teacher vacancy, we are witnessing a high volume of substitutes in schools for a very long time. There are now commercials trying to recruit teachers into the classroom. At higher ed, in college, community colleges, they're trying to recruit teachers into the profession. Organizations like Best in C are trying to understand what's the connection between recruitment strategies and the teacher pipeline. All of this to say, your kid may have been in a classroom all year long. We're coming up to May, which means we're coming to the end of school. Your kid may have been in a school with a substitute all year long. So I go back. The captain of the learning should be the family, should be the home. The public school should be the supplement. This goes back to funding and recruitment. We need to fund our public schools. Some parents don't have a choice. They have to send their kids to that public school. We need to fund these schools for mental health and awareness, the helping professionals, but also so that we can staff our schools well. There's no way we should have a social worker for 1,600 kids. One for every 1,600 kids, 1,600 kids, one social worker. 1,600 kids for every school psychologist. When we're seeing rates of reports of anxiety and depression in kids skyrocket. We want to fund our school, which means that you must vote. The primaries are coming up, okay? On the ballot, you have the power to vote your school board member who will hire your superintendent, to vote for your state superintendent, which will set the education priorities for our state, and your legislators. Your legislators have tremendous control over the state superintendent. Please take the elections that's happening within the next few months seriously. The primaries are just as important as November. Don't sit out. All right? Now, I want to let you know that the national trend doesn't mean that we dismiss ourselves from the local efforts. Historically, in Eastern North Carolina, we've seen some patterns, but you have a chance to own that narrative, even if it's a national narrative of vacancies. Let's be the state that makes a change. Let's be the state that finds a solution to the vacancies in our state. But also, if you're retired, become a teacher. If you're looking for a new career, become a teacher. I have been a teacher and a principal in different states, and it has changed my life. It has allowed for me to see local government. If you want to know how your city works, become a teacher. Because those who are hungry, you're going to know in your class. If you want to know how we are helping the unhoused, the homeless people, become a teacher. You're going to know who are the McKenty-Vento, which means these kids don't have a home. You're going to learn that whole population. If you want to know how well we have diverse communities in your neighborhood, become a teacher. You're going to see who's being bused from where. Schools tell you everything about your city. Schools tell you everything about your county. Education is huge. Education is the history of Black North Carolina. There's a historian, Ann McCall. She takes leaders from across the state. She take you to the old state capitol right across from the History Museum. She sits you in the seats, and she gives you the script of the legislators who debated on whether we should have education for African Americans in this state. And she allows for you to hear the words. And in those words, you learn how intense the fight, the urgency, the request to have a place for African Americans to learn in the state of North Carolina. This is not something we should take for granted. It's a luxury to have places where we can learn. We owe public education. So don't sit out on this primary. Our history is deeply connected to the launch of public education for African Americans in this state. Take it serious. Be the first teacher for your child. And when we come back, I want to give a shout out, some love to a few individuals that are really leading in this area of education. And so with that, I'll take us on a break, but come back for this shout out.
Every time I step in the booth, I speak the truth. Y'all know what I'm bringing to you.
You're live on the air, and the truth with Terrance Ruth. North Carolina news and politics, culture, sports, and the latest from the Triangle and Eastern Carolina. The truth with Terrance Ruth.
The Legal Way with attorney Antoine Woodby. 10 a.m. Saturdays on Choice.
Showers of Blessing Christian Center invites you to listen in every Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. on Choice FM. Showers of Blessing, 1740 East Raleigh Boulevard in Rocky Mount. For ministry information and upcoming events, call 252-985-1848 or visit showersofblessing.org. Showers of Blessing Christian Center, where Dr. Bernard Grant is pastor.
You're invited to an evening of spoken word and slam poetry. It's Risen Voices, honoring Black history and performed by community members of Rocky Mount. Friday, February 16th at the historic Booker T Theater and hosted by the Imperial Center Theater. If you would like to perform, call 252-972-1369 or email robert.goodson@rockymountnc.gov. Risen Voices, February 16th, 7:30 p.m. at the Booker T Theater, 170 East Thomas Street, Rocky Mount. Free admission. Doors open at 6 p.m. and there will be vendors.
This is WRSV, Elm City.
Turn up.
Choice FM.
The Love Hard Tour. Keisha Cole, Trey Songz, Shaheem, and K. Michelle. You deserve a night of love. Friday, February 23rd at the Greensboro Coliseum. Tickets available at Ticketmaster. Presented by the Black Promoters Collective.
Every time I step in the booth, I speak the truth. Y'all know what I'm bringing to you.
You're live on the air, and the truth with Terrance Ruth. North Carolina news and politics, culture, sports, and the latest from the Triangle and Eastern Carolina. The truth with Terrance Ruth.
All right, welcome back. Now, I'm going to give a little shout out to somebody I adore tremendously. This person is in the North Carolina Hall of Fame. We literally all rest on this human being's shoulders, and that's Dr. Dudley Flood. Some of y'all may know him, some of you may not, but Dr. Dudley Flood is still alive. He's in his 90s, and he was the superintendent that spearheaded the integration of schools when it was a federal mandate. He was the first Black assistant superintendent at DPI. And he's still here. Actually, he has a flood center. It's called the Dudley Flood Center. That's in his name. That's going on today. Still fighting for Black and brown children across the state. Dr. Flood lives in Southeast Raleigh. He's been in that home since he moved to Raleigh, and so he calls Southeast Raleigh home. But he has served the entire state. Dr. Dudley Flood is a pioneer in education, but also he has been the figure, I think, that we should give his flowers while he's still here. And so my shout out to Dr. Flood is, one, he operates in leadership that's effective. Some people lead, they may make some noise, but they never accomplish quite what they're trying to do. But Dr. Dudley Flood, he landed the plane. We have the public schools we have today because he existed. We have the public schools that we had today because he had the complexity. We're talking about a basketball high school coach all the way up to assistant superintendent for the state, and was able to not just hear the policy of integration, but to lead it, to go into counties and districts that had racial tension and say, we got to do this thing, to go and meet with principals and say, listen, we got to integrate these schools by this date. Some people can talk about it, but I just appreciate Dr. Dudley Flood for being about it. And he is still on the speaking circuit. He is still mentoring. If you have a superintendent in this area, more than likely they've been touched by Dr. Flood. We have former governors that have been advised by Dr. Flood. We have county superintendent, state superintendent that he advised. So either you believe it or not, you owe this man some flowers. And so for me, my shout out and my last words for our show today is just Dr. Dudley Flood. Please look him up. He's still alive and he deserves his flowers now. And so meet us again next week, same time, The Truth with Terrance Ruth. Thank y'all for joining. Please keep bringing your questions. See you next week.
The truth. Every time I step in the booth, I speak the truth. Y'all know when